Your measurement kit will come with 2 thread pitch gauges, one metric, one standard, one steel or aluminum block with a hole drilled into it, and 2 bolts with 2 nuts and 2 flat washers. Your kit might have different size bolts than this one has. You will have one USA standard bolt, and that will be identified by these 3 markings on it. This indicates a grade 5. If there were 2 more markings on it, it would be a grade 8, which would be a harder bolt. The metric bolt comes with a number stamped on it, and this one says 8.8. That is the grade for that bolt. And over on the side I have another bolt. This one is also metric, and it's got a 10 on the top, so this is a grade 10, and this one is harder than this one over here. Occasionally you might have a specialty bolt. There's no markings on this, and this is also a metric bolt. In this exercise, we're going to use the dial caliper, and we're going to measure this bolt, this washer, this nut, and we're going to measure the depth of this block here. There's a hole drilled into the bottom of that. So let's get started. And the first thing we're going to measure is we're going to measure this bolt. And when you measure a bolt length, you're actually going to be measuring from the bottom of the head to the ends of the threads here. So this is the bolt length. And we're going to use a depth gauge in the dial caliper. So I'm just going to use the thumb wheel here to open up the caliper. And I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to hold the depth gauge on the bottom of that head of the bolt as I slide it down until it hits. Then I can go ahead and read my caliper here, and I can read how much that length is. And in this case here, it's 1 inch and 481 thousandths of an inch. Now, if we want to know the diameter of the bolt shaft there, we use the outside part here. And before we do any measurement, obviously, we would have checked the calibration, which I can see right here. It's at 0. And so you just simply come over, stick that bolt shank in there like that, and now we can make our measurements. Be careful, when you have a lot of room, there are flat edges on this jaw. Make sure we measure on the flat edge of the jaw. That's the same measurement. Prefer not to measure with the sharp tips here, because that will actually fit down inside the threads there, and I'm going to get a different measurement. So the depth of that thread is actually, looks like a 330 thousandths of an inch. So by going with the flat area, we're going to get the diameter of that bolt. If we want to know the overall length of this bolt, head and nut, then that would be done something like this. And I'm applying gentle pressure here. If I want to know the size of the hex, I can measure it this way. If I want to know the thickness of this washer, that's going to be measured like this. If I want to measure the outside of this nut, that would be done this way. If I want to know the inside of this nut, that's going to be done this way. And I'm holding gentle pressure on it here when I'm going to read it. And I'm also going to wiggle gently back and forth here as applying pressure to make sure I've got it centered. Finally, with this block, we can do 2 things. We can measure the size of the hole. So I can put my inside measurements right here inside there like that, and I can get the size of that hole or the inside diameter, wiggle it back and forth a little bit, make sure it's square, or I can thread it down, use the depth portion, stick the depth portion in there, slide this down till it hits on there, and then I can bring it over and I can measure the depth of that hole in this steel block or aluminum block.